close that door a little bit. Hello and welcome to the Stream Parson podcast. And today, we're just gonna hang out and talk about Christmas stuff, Christmas related things, Christmas stories, because we're in that Christmas season already. Can you believe that it's 20 days till Christmas, right? And so you got your advent calendars, and eating through the okay chocolates. I don't want to say they're bad, but they're just designed to be something to get kids into a countdown for Christmas, right? But Christmas is coming soon, and I talked about this a couple weeks ago about hopes and expectations for Christmas, and today we're gonna just do more of telling Christmas stories. I'm just gonna tell some funny Christmas stories I have in my life and stuff like that. And just for us to just relish in this Christmas season, right? Because one of the things that just I don't know, it can be, life can be tough, and as of late, right? The whole COVID thing, and there's the whole oh, there's new variant, all right. How many more variants before 2021 is over, right? And stuff like that, and on top of with all that comes with stuff of employment troubles for a lot of people, and stuff like that. And but as we move toward December, and I talked about this a couple weeks ago too, and December can be kind of like a demoralizing month otherwise, right? If we didn't have the Christmas season. And yes, I will be fumbling with this hat quite a bit because this hat is a really big hat. I'll talk about this hat later. And but before we get more into the story time, it can be. I know a lot of people will move into December kind of just try and go through the motions, just try and get things done and be done with the year and all that, right? And a lot of people can be, they just feel like they just want this year to be over, right? But I think with the Christmas season, it's a time for us to just really look back on how good we actually have it in general, right? And compared to there's a lot of places in the world where things can be pretty rough. And I was just reading some stuff about some of my buddies are gonna resume mission trips and whatnot come the new year, and some of the places they have to go to, they're pretty rough. And I've done a number of missions trips overseas and whatnot, and it can be tough to go to a place like Petra or something, or a lot of people that go to China for missionary trips, parts of South Africa and whatnot. When you get that bit of perspective of how hard life can really be, I think one thing that we should always be appreciative of is looking back on how good we actually have it in this year, right? Despite all the drama that there is. But that's one of the things that Christmas does for us really well, right? Is to be reminded of the gift of life that we have, right? And so and our gift giving traditions at Christmas is kind of a reflection of that, right? That life itself is a gift, and so we participate in this gift exchange to one another to remind each other of how good we have it, because we are able to do that, right? To be thankful for gifts, right? Whereas other places in the world, that's not true at all, right? And it really sucks when you see those realities, right? But here we are, and December's here, and Christmas is so soon. Now we're gonna get to the more I gave my little melancholy preface, so now we get to laugh about dumb shit, right? So first of all, one of the things that people wish December would just go over quickly would be Christmas music. Oh my god, right? The first few times when the workplace plays the Christmas playlist. It's fun the first few times, right? And some people start it like pretty early, right? Like some people would start as early as like basically when Halloween ends. And I think that's a bit too early because that's like 2 months, dude, right? Like my workplace, some people started playing Christmas music like just shortly after Remembrance Day was a thing, or Veterans Day in the States. And so like what Veterans Day was like three almost a month ago, like 3 weeks ago, right? So it's like okay, like some people started Christmas music right after that. It's like no, too soon, right? Because now we're in December, and people really bulk that shit, right? Of like Christmas music everywhere, and so like one of the things too, where like I kept track at my workplace of like the Christmas playlist because I think like one of the funny things too is that like because modern technology, we just like bring one of those like Bluetooth speakers and then we just like connect someone's phone to it, right? It's not like in them olden days where like the music at work was like a radio you had at work, right? And you just turn the radio on at work and then it plays, right? But of course, some people want to have just the music, right? Not the radio jockeys, talking about whatever, right? Or, commercials. Oh God, not the commercials, right? And so, but nowadays, you just have a playlist and you connect it to a Bluetooth speaker. But I swear, at my workplace, it's always the same guy, the same phone being connected to the speaker. Cause like, I'm like, okay, the first few songs play, and it's like normal music. It's not Christmas music yet, but it's always like, okay, so it's like the first song that goes on is Mariah Carey's "We Belong Together," and then the next song after that is like, I can't remember what song plays after that. It's like a newer song, and then like I think it's like the fifth song of this guy's playlist, "All I Want for Christmas" by Mariah Carey. I'm like, no, and then right? Like after that happens, once that starts, I Saw Mommy Kissing Santa Claus comes after. Wham's Last Christmas, and they all start playing one after another. It's like, oh, right. And the worst part is like when you have like a, let's say, 8-hour work shift, right? But the music playlist is only for like an hour to 2 hours. It's like I think it's like an hour and 40 minutes. I've been trying to keep track of it, right? It's like an hour and 40 minutes playlist. That means the playlist plays like 3 times at least during the work shift. And you have to hear the same Christmas songs in the same order. And it's ready to like just grind in the back of your mind. You're just like ready to lose your sanity. And I like I like some Christmas music, but like there's only so much of it you can take, right? And especially if you're like in evangelical circles, like once again, as Christmas songs are important, right? The coming of Jesus and everything. But like even then, I know this is gonna sound mega heretical, but like I can only take so much of like Christmas music. And then on Sunday mornings, they play Christmas music. So it's like Christmas music all the time, right? And for the first little while, it's all right. It's all right. But then, this is only the first week of December, right? Went to church on Sunday. And we did the Hark the Herald Angels sing. We did what child is this? And we did some other one. Hark the Herald Angels we did some other one, I can't remember. But basically, like, we played Christmas songs already in church service. Of course, like in church, we also do the whole Advent thing, right? So, Advent week 1 this week, the lighting of the candle and all that ceremonial stuff. That part I don't mind, right? But God, the Christmas music, oh, it's just like it wears its welcome very quickly. Let's just say that. That's the thing about Christmas music in my mind, and maybe it's just like I'm a Scrooge or something, but like, I don't know. I was never the hugest like fan of Christmas music, I guess. That's maybe why I get like, you know, irritated. Like right now I'm at that breaking point and we've only hit the first week. You'll see me next week and it'll be way worse, right? I'll be like, oh man, I just can't wait for Christmas to be over because like it's not just like the Christmas music thing. I think that's the big one that drives you nuts, right? But of course, then you have to deal with all the Christmas parties, right? Well, last year there wasn't any, right? Because it's still the pandemic and everything. So we'll see how it goes down this year. If like for example work companies and let me know if your work company, I mean if your work company even does it, let alone has resumed doing it since the COVID pandemic, right? So with my current uh, workplace that I'm at, this will be the first Christmas that um, we'll be doing, right? This will be the first Christmas that I've been at this workplace, right? So I actually don't know if they actually do anything at all. Maybe they'll give us like, I assume we'll probably get gift baskets. And in a place where I work was like primarily with food, right? I would assume that like we'll probably get some food based food, like a basket, right? A food basket basically. And we'll see what kind of cool stuff if they give us anything this year. I don't know. But the other thing too is that I guess um, you know, the pastoral spirit in me, I guess, is like, you know what? I'm gonna buy Christmas presents for my coworkers. So I'll tell you this story just to start us off. And man, like it's a blessing from God that this happened. So like I was like, okay, I'm gonna buy for my work, like my coworkers or my group in the coworker among coworkers, anyways, because I can't buy for every single person. That'd be nuts. But like my team, if you will, I'm like, I'm gonna buy some ice cream from this place, and it's one of those like hipster ice cream places, I guess you could say, is where I went to go get ice cream, and so today I went to go get some because you want to go earlier, right? You want to go before like the orders start getting crazy, and especially when like places start having stock problems. And the place I went to, it's called Ernest Ice Cream. They already had stock problems because I went to the place. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna buy this particular type that comes around December, right? It's like a Christmas related ice cream. And actually, I'll show it to you in a second. I'll grab it in a second. But I'll tell the story first. So there's a particular flavor because it's Christmas time. It's like a rum and eggnog, right? Which is a holiday drink for adults around Christmas time, right? You mix a little bit of rum with eggnog because eggnog is a thing that's normally associated with Christmas, right? And so this this ice cream place, Ernest Ice Cream, they have a rum and eggnog ice cream, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna buy some for the guys at work. And so I went to the place and I was like, oh, they have the menu on the outside, for safety reasons. They have a menu on the window so you can look at the menu before you enter, right? And I was looking at the menu, and then there's like the categories of like what you can get via scoops or by a pint, which obviously you have to buy by the pint if you're gonna buy people a Christmas present, right? Because you're gonna somehow preserve an ice cream on a cone, right? That's not gonna happen, right? So I saw that parts of it were wiped out, like because it's like and hipster stores like to do this, right? It's like on a chalkboard or a blackboard, whatever you want to call it, right? So it's on a chalkboard, and the menu would be on the chalkboard, and parts of it are rubbed out, and I assume it's because of the stuff they've run out, right? So I look at the two categories as the stuff you get via a pint and stuff you can get via the scoop. And so the scoop side had, the rum and eggnog ice cream, and then I looked at the other side, and it wasn't there. It wasn't on the pint category. I'm like, oh no, there's like, it's in season. I saw the ad for it on Facebook. I saw the ad for it on social media and their website. Did they run out already? And so I went inside anyway. And I was like, hey, you guys out of the rum and eggnog ice cream by the pint. And then, the lady there was like, oh no, we just got boxes in. And I was like, oh, I'm going to buy a bunch. Of course, unfortunately, she had to put a limit on me of like how many I was allowed to buy, which I obviously bought the limit because that's one of the things too. I was like, I wanted to get that one for my coworkers, except for one of them, I can't get it because she's underage and would look really, really bad for me to give it. Like, think of like when you say it out loud, it sounds awful, right? Like if I were to give an underage girl alcoholic ice cream, like that just be awful. So I bought something else for her. But for all the other guys that I work with, we're all they're all legal age or whatever, right? So I'm like, oh, let's just buy a bunch of rum and eggnog ice cream for them, and it was kind of like, you know, it was God's provision, honestly. That excuse me, that they had the rum and eggnog in by the pint, so I bought like the amount that they allowed me to buy, and then some, right? Because I had to buy a couple extra ones, and then the funny thing was before I went, and my co-workers have immediately caught on, right? You do it once and they catch on pretty quick, right? I mean, to be fair, everybody's an adult, right? So you'd have to be stupid not to catch on quickly. Like, I started asking some of the guys, I'm like, do you guys like ice cream? As soon as I asked that question, they're like, are we doing ice cream? Are you gonna buy us ice cream? Are you gonna buy us ice cream? Because the story was, not a Christmas story, but back in Halloween, I decided, hey, you know what? I've been at this company for like over 6 months, and we haven't done anything as like coworkers, right? For like the 6 months I've been there. So that was back at Halloween, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna buy us some pizza. So I asked around, I was like, hey, you guys like pizza? Are you guys like okay with eating certain things, whatever, right? And then, you know, they're like, oh, we'll be here on a certain day. And then I was like, yeah, I'm gonna buy us pizza. So then I bought guys pizza from a place. I must have told this story already, but I'll tell it again for the sake of telling it now. Now that I'm already this far in the story, right? And of course, like I bought my coworkers pizza, but of course the tricky part was I like to go to this one place because I've mentioned before, and for my fellow Vancouverites watching this, I live close to the drive, right? And if you live close to the drive, Little Italy is what it's also known as. Well, that's what it used to be before it became the hipster place called the Drive, right? Because it's on a place called Commercial Drive, or the street is called Commercial Drive, and it has a large Italian heritage, hence the name Little Italy. And of course, if you have a heavy Italian heritage, well, there's going to be lots of pizza places, right? And so there, when you have a lot of pizza places, you have a lot of, people trying to distinguish themselves as being more Italian than everyone else. So you have these like very Italian kind of places, right? And so when I was telling the guys at work, I was like, oh, I'm gonna buy us pizza. What do you guys find with eating? And then one of the guys, I had to make fun of him about it later. He was like, pepperoni and cheese. I'm like, for freak's sakes, man! Like, I'm gonna buy pizza from a like higher end place in Little Italy. You don't ask for pepperoni and cheese, dude. You just don't do that. So I had to convince him that we were getting something else, right? And so we did some neat stuff like Italian sausage and other like garden style vegetable pizzas and whatever, right? And so after that pizza thing, right? When I brought up the question, now time, skipping back to current day, I asked, "Do you guys like ice cream?" The guys immediately caught on. They're like, well, "What are you getting us?" I'm like, "Shit! I gotta make myself less predictable, I guess, in the future." Um, but that'd be pretty hard to do once they catch on the first time, right? But yeah, so now I was like, oh yeah, I just buy a bunch of ice cream for my coworkers, and grand old time. And then the funny thing is like, why would you buy it today then? You still have like a couple weeks, right? Because some of the guys will be. One reason why I have to buy the ice cream early is because some of the guys will be taking their like vacation time during the Christmas week. And I mean, younger guys do that, right? They still have that like school mentality in their heads where like I get those 2 weeks in December off of everything, which is not true in most cases, right? Like I'm going to be working a lot more during those weeks because a lot of them won't be around. So when you're an older guy, like you just accept that, like, oh, I have to work during the Christmas season. I mean, there was that one time when I was a security guard and I had to work Christmas. I had to work the Christmas. I had to work Christmas Day one year because crime never takes a day off, right? And so crime prevention can't take a day off. So I had to work a Christmas Day, which that will be the next story I tell. But before I tell that story, I'm going to show you this ice cream. So this is going to be back and forth for like a couple minutes, but I'll be right back to grab it. And I'll show you this rum and eggnog ice cream. Okay, this is not gonna be out of the freezer for very long, because obviously I don't want it to melt. But my dad's gonna look into the freezer later and be like, "What the hell, Michael?" Because he's gonna look at the freezer and see it's like loaded with these things. So this is what I'm talking about. And if any of my coworkers are watching this is what you're getting for Christmas from me. These things aren't cheap though. They're like, God, like I bought like 8 cans for like the. Well, technically there's 7 coworkers. I bought an extra one for myself because I'm like, dude, I'm not going without some of this myself, right? But yeah, this is the rum and eggnog ice cream, and I've had it before. It's really good. Anyway, I'm gonna put this away now, so I'll be back again. But yeah, this is what I went to go buy today for my coworkers and be like, "Merry Christmas, guys." But I won't even give it to them for like another 2 weeks. But you have to be ahead of the line, right? And today was like Providence, right? Like I thought that they would not have the ice cream today because their menu blackboard said that they were out, right? And I was kind of like, oh well, I'm already here. I might have to just buy something else. And I really considered that. I considered like, oh, buying something else for the coworkers, but um, you know, as God would have it, it's like no, we just got some today, and I was like, awesome, because I'm gonna buy a bunch now. And so, yeah, that's what I'm giving to you guys. So, if any of my coworkers are watching this, because I know a couple of you guys do. I know Nathan tends to watch it. He tends to watch these post stream because I know he's in school right now. But yeah, rum and eggnog though. Rum and eggnog is pretty good in general. So when you have it in ice cream form, right, it's like, it's good. Anyways, go put this back, and then we'll continue more Christmas stories. Okay, I'm back. But yeah, so it was really nice that the store had it for me today, and I was able to just buy it all now. But I'm not giving it to them for like another couple weeks, closer to Christmas Day, And I even come to work wearing the hat and be like, "Here, you guys, like Merry Christmas," right? So that's kind of how you know it's gonna be. So I did say I was gonna tell this other story because I mention it briefly before I showed you the ice cream. The day I had to work on Christmas Day as loss prevention. Now I was a security guard at a dollar store because dollar stores need security guards, and it's one of those funny things where like people think the shoplifting happens at higher end stores, which it does, but a lot more shoplifting happens in like dollar stores and places where like stuff is low price. And the reason for that is, one, because those stores tend to sell like essential things that people need, right? So like, snack foods is an easy thing for like a lot of people wanting to steal. And for example, there was this dollar store I used to do security work at. They would sell tinfoil there, and people would steal that because, you know, for those of you in the not in the know, people use tinfoil to um, be a heat conductor when they're smoking crack, right? And stuff like that. And so stuff like that is more like a target for like a lot of shoplifting, because obviously um, now I know somebody's gonna give me shit because I just said obviously with this next statement, but obviously a lot of people who shoplift are heavy drug abusers, right? So obviously they would steal things that would help them in their drug use. So once again, stealing snacks, food, right? You gotta have food, because the logic of a drug user is every dollar I don't have to spend for food is a dollar I can use for drugs. So that's the reason why food is easily something that would be, stolen, right? And dollar stores tend to have, like little snack sections, and they try to pilfer those things pretty quickly just so they can nibble on it, right? And of course, like stuff like chips is definitely like a post munchies kind of favorite, right? A lot of people that, when you get high or whatever, you have the munchies, and chips make like a good snack for that, right? And so, because of course chips are small and you can consume a lot of it at once, right? Even though it's bad for you to do that, but it's something that's easy to eat, right? And so that's why dollar stores tend to get targeted quite a lot for like shoplifting. And they have other things that are like essential needs, right? And so tinfoil was one. And then of course there's like some other things too, right? Like scissors and cheap scissors and stuff like that. And what else have I seen? Like people straight up trying to shoplift. Um, Basic like bathroom essential things like toothbrushes and stuff, right? Those are sold in dollar stores, and a lot of those kind of things get stolen, right? Another, but of course, the other big reason of why um, a lot of shoplifting happens in like dollar stores versus like, I'll contrast it with another place I did security work for. So I've done security work in like a dollar store. I've also done security work at like a high-end Italian, um, I wouldn't say a clothing store, although they sell relatively regular clothes too. But it's like a place where you buy suits. Italian suits is what it specializes in. Like in a place like that, you usually never have trouble, right? Half the time I'm just standing there, right, and watching the door, and just basically the way that it works is, and of course it's like part of it is zoning too, right? So in the Italian suit store, right, one way in, one way out, right? And so the security guard, you just plop them at the door, right? And so the logic of how the security guard works is that the guards at the door, a person's not going to try, like a person who's going to steal isn't going to just barge through the front door and try to steal something, right? It wouldn't work because the guard's like right there, right? He won't even let you in. And so once again, when I was doing security guard at this Italian suit store, I just stand at the door, and if there was any potential of like a person trying to commit theft, well, they would just see the guard at the door and they would leave, right? They wouldn't even try. Dollar stores are very different though, because one, a dollar store, has a lot more like, it has a lot more space overall, right? Because once again, the way that a suit store would work is that like really half the store has like the merchandise showing, but half of the store is actually like the change rooms and the actual inventory, where like the guests that come in, and they're usually affiliated with the staff members anyway, right? Like a store like that would have clientele, right? Because and once again, the contrast between like an Italian suit store and a dollar store is like, well, dollar store is like, well, anyone goes in there, right? It's a place anyone goes, right? An Italian suit store, the average person doesn't go in that kind of store, right? Because who the hell has like $5,000 to $10,000 to spend on a suit? Because that's how much these things cost, right? It's ridiculous. It was so funny when I worked at this Italian suit store. Just as a side note, just as a side note, this Italian suit store, my uniform. So I would wear like formal clothes over my security outfit. But my formal clothes are like a $500 like suit from Nex, which is like it's nice, but it's chump change compared to this store, right? That I was working at, right? A $500 suit, a $500 suit from Nex is like cute, right? The cheapest suit in the store, this Italian suit store, was like the cheapest one would be like $5,000, right? The cheap ones, right? Hell, there was actually a Chinese dude that would enter the store like once a month or something when I was working there. This old Chinese dude comes in once a month and he buys a belt, and the belt costs like $300. The belt, right? That belt that this guy buys like every month, right? So he pays like, and that's just the belts, right? That this guy buys. He buys other stuff too, from like on occasion, but that's a lot more rare. But like he buys a belt every month. Every month he's basically paying the equivalent of my uniform, right? Or my formal clothes I wear over my uniform, right? And so like a store like that, a very high end store, a person is going to commit theft doesn't just walk in there, right? Because stereotyping aside, most of these guys are like, they're pretty shabby. They're not, super high end people that steal. Because once again, well, I mean, to be fair, theft can have many reasons other than wealth. Poverty does not cause crime. Poverty does not cause theft. Theft causes poverty. Contrary to what people will tell you and what the media tells you, the media is actually completely wrong about that. Poverty does not cause theft. Theft causes poverty, right? But we can always talk about that in another video. But anyway, in this Italian store, like once again, like you're not gonna have a person from the street walk in and try to steal something. It wouldn't work, right? Like if a person that looked like a bum tried to enter the store, I would immediately bar them out, right? Oh, but you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. It's like, well, why else would this guy come into the store, right? No reason, right? And then, of course, the other thing, too, that a lot of people don't get about when people shoplift is that a lot of the time, when I talk about, like, shoplifting food for, like, a quick snack, that's only part of why people like, a lot of people, drug users, shoplift, right? The other reason, too, and this is why they would go to, like, a department store or something. And I used to do security work at a Japanese kind of department store, which actually did have its trouble of like some shoplifters here and there. But the other thing too is that these guys will shoplift something and then they will sell it on the street. They'll street market it and they'll sell it to people. And so there's no way you could imagine if you were able to steal a $5,000 suit. It'd be really hard to pawn it off, right? And that's the other thing too. Like for example, you steal like toiletries from a dollar store. That's easy to pawn off and get some quick, pocket cash for more drugs. So that's another reason why dollar stores are easily targeted for shoplifting. Now, the other problem too is that a lot of these kind of stores tend to be open on Christmas. Like dollar stores and other places where I've done security work, like fast foods. And yes, in Vancouver, you don't think of it very often, but like fast food restaurants. Can you even call fast food restaurant a restaurant? But like fast food restaurants having security guards, like, and I've done my fair share of them. those places tend to be open on Christmas Day. But if those places are open on Christmas Day, then guess what? You got to have a guard, right? And so there was this time, well, anyway, the place where I did security work on Christmas Day, it was a dollar store. And it's, this dollar store is in like a really crappy part of town. As a matter of fact, I actually checked. Well, this was actually like a couple months ago when I checked, but that dollar store is now gone. It's been gone for a while now, and part of it is because of COVID for sure, right? But a dollar store in that part of town, the seedy part of town, it would not survive. It just wouldn't, right? But anyway, I was doing security work at there that day, and you know, the other thing too is that like another reason why a lot, and then this is where like I don't know, I guess I have a very cynical view of the world, right? And I know that sounds really bad, especially coming from like a pastor, right? A pastor shouldn't have a cynical view of the world, but anyway, here we are, right? But on top of like easy stuff that's easy to steal and pawn off, things that uh, a lot of drug users would need are found in dollar stores. Hmm, interesting correlation there. But the other thing too is that the average person doesn't really give a crap about dollar stores and their condition. And so, yeah, this makes me sound really mean to say this, but a lot of average people, by their attitude toward dollar stores and by extension dollar store employees and stuff like that, which is one of those things you see those PSAs of people saying like, oh, don't forget to be nice to your retail workers on Christmas. It's like we should be nice to people all the time, but that's besides the point. But dollar stores tend to have very little regard by the average citizen, and so this also gives a license for shoplifters to be more confident shoplifting at a dollar store because the average person isn't going to care, right? Because the average person thinks, well, I'm not going to intervene or help the staff of the dollar store over stuff that's like what, a couple dollars. Like it's not worth endangering myself, and that's a fair thing to think, right? You wouldn't endanger yourself for such low value items, right? But oh my gosh, when I was doing this like security job work on this day, right? And what do people come to a dollar store on Christmas Day for, right? It's like some last minute like party stuff when they're having a Christmas party or whatever. Those Christmas decoration things that they're pretty cheap, right? And some people just get them from a dollar store. And so, some people coming in for last minute shopping, and this was like one of those things that just really made like I don't know, maybe like a total like Grinch about Christmas too. I guess in some regard, this is maybe why I hate Christmas so much sometimes. But like, people come in and they're like, they're clearly in a rush, but like, come on, even when you're in a rush, you can brush off the snow off of your coat before you enter the store, right? Because I've had people, they just come from outside, they don't brush themselves when they enter the store, they just walk in, right? And they got snow on them, and then the snow kind of falls off as they're running around in the store. And then you know what naturally is going to happen, right? Snow ends up on the ground, and then people walk over it because people trying to just move fast, right? They don't go around it. They don't care. So then it starts making that slush. They start walking over it, and then it gets slushy. And then of course, because you're stepping on it with your boots, there's probably dirt and stuff, and you get that mud slush. I mentioned this before too. That mud slush, right? That brown snow stuff that like starts sticking on the ground. It's pretty nasty, and so you get a lot of that, right? And so this dollar store just ended up having like was full of that crap, right? And the workers, you gotta feel so bad for these guys, right? Because they gotta then get the mop and they gotta clean it up, and cleaning snow slush is actually very very difficult. It's actually very difficult because you can't just throw a mop over it, wipe it, and then it's gone, right? Because one, well, snow itself is water, So then it adds volume to the mop, right? Because obviously, how do mops work, right? They soak water. They're giant. They're in for all intents and purposes, they're just giant sponges for the floor. And so you're trying to absorb the water from the snow, but then of course underneath that snow is the dirt, and the dirt, what the dirt ends up doing is that it ends up like when it gets stuck onto the mop, it then makes the mop less effective, right? And that's what you have in all this mud slush, right? You got a lot of dirt in it too, and so the mop starts becoming pretty ineffective. Well, you think that, oh, you just put the mop in the hot water and then it'll be fine. It's not that simple, because once again, that tub of hot water, well, now it's all dirty and full of ice water, which greatly cools the water, and it contaminates it. So then, if you try to wipe again at like after the first dip, right, of the mop, well, any dip after that, you have this contaminated water. Well, the contaminated water then makes the mopping way less effective. And so, these poor employees trying to figure this crap out and get, clean this floor. And sorry, I keep fumbling around with this hat because the fact of the matter is this hat is actually too big for my head. So it's constantly sliding down. There you go. And so, you gotta feel so bad for these guys, right? And of course, like you as the security guard, part of your job is to walk around the store and patrol the store, which is another reason why dollar stores is so hard to actually do security work in. Because once again, contrast to the Italian suit store, I stand in one place and I just look out the door, right? And if I see someone skeevy, I just prevent them entry. In a dollar store, you have to patrol the store, which makes it really difficult, right? And this is where one of those problematic things were like, well, aren't there multiple security guards? Not in the particular store. Because once again, that means you have to pay twice. The store would have to pay twice as much, right? Because they have to pay for 2 guards. But basically, if you have 1 guard there, well, first of all, you don't have a guy watching the entrance, and that if you're at the entrance, you can watch relatively skeevy people. But of course, dollar stores are way trickier, right? Because it's not like the Italian suit store. It's not like, okay, the obvious guy who looks like a bum, you know, you're not going to let him into the Italian suit store because you don't think a bum is going to carry around like 10 grand, right? Dollar stores are completely different, right? And of course, this is part of the whole like race training and stuff like that. So like, oh well, just because there's a black guy who a lot of them don't dress very well, you don't know if any of them could be shoplifters or all of them are, right? I know that sounds like mega racist, but like you don't know that. And in my days of security guard, I mean, how many times have I been threatened by black guys, right, and told to go back to my country, by black guys, even though I'm born here, right? But I don't hear that. I don't hear that from white guys very often. I don't get told to go back to where I came from. But anyway, that's besides the point. But anyway, so you got to patrol over this like shitty like you know mud slush, right? And that's easy to navigate around the store. And then of course some people like they make a big mess, and oh my god, it was hectic to like do security work on Christmas Day. It was snowing, right? It was messy, and it was just so sad, right? And then of course like people just kind of not really treating the retail workers very well. And I've told you stories about that already. I don't have to tell it again. But this was true on Christmas Day. I'm like, are you shitting me? Like on Christmas Day, you're gonna be an asshole to people because they have to work at a crappy place like a dollar store on Christmas Day. You're really gonna give people a hard time for that, right? But people do, and it sucks, right? But I remember feeling so bad for those guys, and then I was like, hey, you know, um, before we all go home, let's just go to that bubble tea shop across the street. I'll treat you guys, right? And I treated a bunch of the dollar store employees to some bubble tea across the street. And we were super courteous to them, obviously, but like, there was a bubble tea place, and I was like, I just treated them to some bubble tea after. And it's one of those things where it's like, oh, you you should be the the one who brings Christmas joy to somebody, right? Don't be like these other ass hats that like, so self-absorbed and whatever. And it's only worse these days, right? Because you have all this paranoia with like the COVID thing, and then you have the lack of moral principles in a lot of people, because socialism promotes selfishness, contrary to what a lot of socialists will tell you. But you have a lot of these people that are a lot more selfish and kind of just be assholes, right? And unfortunately, our society and our culture promotes that, and so it's harder and harder to find joy in Christmas, right? But what I want to encourage you, and telling my shitty security guard story, is that like you can be the one who can, as I like to tell the youth at my church, be the blessing in someone else's life, right? We all talk about like wanting blessings from God, but sometimes God makes you the blessing for someone else, right? So more often than not, you should go out and be that blessing for somebody, right? Because that's what it means to live out loving others, right? Loving your neighbor as Jesus commands us, right? Be that blessing for somebody, and that's something that Christmas should remind us of doing. That you and I should go out and be blessings for other people and be good to them and always be extremely courteous and whatnot. And not just courteous, but show kindness, so show generosity, show love, right? Because of course, as any Christian would tell you, like Christmas is about when God gave us the gift of salvation through Jesus, right? And of course, there's "Oh Holy Night" is a good song to listen to, right? A Christmas song that I don't get sick of. I guess because there's enough good versions of it out there that like if I listen to it, I'm like, oh, it's a good "Oh Holy Night," song. It's one of the few Christmas songs I actually really like. One of the Christmas songs I actually really dislike. This is a mega hot take of the week. We haven't had one of these in a while, but here's the mega hot take of the week. When I was doing my master's in seminary, there was a song that came out that was really, really popular. Well, it was around longer. I think the song originally came out like early 2000s. I think the song originally came out in the early 2000s, maybe mid 2000s, when I was like late high school. But it wasn't as popular back then because I guess not enough traction was made for this song until Pentatonics did it. Now, for those of you who are like, who's Pentatonics? Because I'm so old that I still remember who these guys are. Well, I mean, Pentatonics isn't even that old, right? But the problem is they kind of fell out of like popularity because like they were cool for a while, but then like they stopped making a lot of music because of course, all their guys, they decided that they just want to go back to do normal life stuff, and so the band kind of broke because of that, right? But anyway, Pentatonics was like a cappella group. They sang a lot a cappella. For those of you who don't know what that means, a cappella means you don't use any instruments. It's all vocals. And Pentatonics was an a cappella singing group, and they were actually pretty good. Their music's pretty good. I don't know if they still make stuff now. I don't think they do, because I think their band broke up only because like a lot of their members wanted to do normal life stuff. Like one of them got married and started a family, so she obviously wasn't around. And then like another guy, I think he moved, right? So obviously he's not around, right? And so the band kind of broke up because of that. But anyway, Pentatonics, they remade the song, and the song was called "Mary Did You Know." I actually really dislike this song. One, because the main reason is because it's biblically inaccurate. But for some reason, when I was in Bible college doing my master's, people loved this song. People loved it, and I was like, but this song is well. The Bible nerd in me is like, oh, the song is biblically inaccurate because she did know, right? And so I remember like, and I even contacted the guy who made this meme because we were just having a good laugh about it. You know the Batman slapping Robin meme? um, and there was the Batman slapping Robin meme. So the how the meme goes is that Robin would say something kind of idiotic, and then Batman would slap him while correcting him. And so one of the memes was Robin saying, "Mary, did you know?" And then Batman slaps him saying, "She didn't know." Read Luke 1, right? The second half of Luke 1. And basically that story, well, the beginning of the second half of Luke 1 tells about Mary's encounter with the angel, and the angel tells her. And it's like, yeah, Mary did know all that stuff about Jesus, right? Contrary to the song, that Pentatonics made about like, did you know that this baby would be the one to save the world and all that, right? It's like she didn't know though, because she was explicitly told that, right? And so it was just one of those funny things. It was like, but I mean, the song, like, once again, nothing against Pentatonics, but like, the song itself is just not a good song, even though they themselves are good singers. Just not like, but I mean, I guess it was popular because it sounded good, right? Even though it was like biblically inaccurate. But I remember like it being really, really popular. But Oh Holy Night, though, on the other hand, that song I really like, and I think a version of it I keep listening to. And God rest her soul, Christina Grimmie sang a version of it, Oh Holy Night. That's probably one of my favorites versions of that song. Well, one, she was an amazing singer as well, and unfortunately, she was shot and killed. That's a mega L right there. And she sang a version. I really, really enjoy that version. I would play it for you guys, but I mean, just go look it up yourselves. I'm not going to get copyright claimed on here. So, and this is not like an advertisement either, right? I'm just saying there's like a really good version of that song. There were a couple other really good ones, but Oh Holy Night's a song I don't get tired of. What's another Christmas song I don't really get tired of? I swear they're not all Christian ones either. Well, Michael Bublé had a couple really good Christmas songs in his Christmas album. So I like listening to Michael Bublé as well. Because, I mean, the thing that made him so brilliant is that, like, he managed to mix, like, old jazz with, like, he had, like, a mix of jazz in, like, a pop style, because he himself is more like a pop singer. But the music he used to go with his singing was, like, traditional, like 1940s jazz. And that was brilliant. I don't know, like, just the comprehension of, like, 2000s pop music, or a 2000 pop singer with a pop singer style voice, but mixed with, like, 40s jazz. Like, who would have thought that would have worked? Well, Michael Bublé did it. I mean, big, right? But, I mean, he had some good Christmas, like, tracks because he obviously uses that formula. And it worked pretty well. And so, his stuff is pretty good, too, for, like, good Christmas music. But yeah, that's... I don't know where I was going with this story, just about, like, Christmas music and stuff, but... I kind of wish that, like, a lot more Christmas pageants were going on, but obviously because of COVID and stuff like that, you don't really see that. I know one church that I used to work at has already done their, like, or I think they're still in the process of. I think they did it last week, and this week they do like a Christmas production. I have not yet had the chance to see it, I have to just catch like a YouTube video of it, because they did like a live stream or whatever, right? So I'll just have to catch like the replay of that in the future. When they're done the production, they'll like post it on their YouTube page after. So I'll probably check that out at some point. But I am I'm a person that actually enjoys those like Christmas pageants, right? Because I mean, it's just like, it's nice to see the church youth, come together and do stuff like that, and it's fun to watch. And it's one of those funny things where like, if it was me like 10 years ago, I would not like Christmas pageants. Just like how well, to an extent, I still don't. But definitely 10 years ago, I would have hated like those. And you see, there's lots of them out now, right? They just pump them out like, well, well, I don't know what a good analogy is here. They just pump these kind of movies out like crazy, and they come around at Christmas time. My mom watches all the like she just sits in front of the TV and watches these movies quite a bit. It's like those we call them like the Christmas Hallmark movies, and it's like a bunch of these like lower grade, lower production level Christmas films that they just pump out like you know some not so big channel, right? So, for example, in BC, we have something called the Women's Network, and this channel plays a lot of these kind of like Christmas movies, right? And you know the kind of movie I'm talking about, right? So it's like some girl in some town, in a Christmas time, and she's kind of like, oh, like what will make this Christmas different from other years, and then the guy shows up, right? The male lead shows up, and then of course, you have some kind of rom-commy, um, wampe bullshit, and then it's Christmas time too, and it's like, oh, my the perfect Christmas, right? Finding love, and as much as I already don't like um, chick flicks, and don't get that mixed with like romantic comedies, because romantic comedies can be pretty great, but if they're too much like the okay, so what differentiates? You're probably wondering now what differentiates rom-coms from chick flicks. Well, first of all, it's kind of like the whole fingers and thumbs thing, right? So all thumbs are fingers, but not all fingers are thumbs. So all chick flicks are rom-coms, but not all rom-coms are chick flicks, because there are so many other ways of like doing romantic comedies, and maybe we'll come back to this at Valentine's or something for sure. That would be a fun talking topic on a podcast. But like the basic to kind of give a more basic definition of what differentiates them is that a rom com usually just tells how a story of like mainly the main female and male lead most of the time anyway, falling in love, right? And then their love story. A chick flick is specifically the female fantasy within that narrative. And so the particular female fantasy of finding this perfect guy who what makes him perfect isn't who he is, but the fact that he sacrifices his everything that he already has for her, and that he's willing to give up stuff, to give up his own ambition for her in a lot of ways, right? And chick flicks don't have to necessarily be rom-coms, right? You think of like the Twilight series. Oh God, I can't believe I'm talking about the Twilight series on this channel. But the Twilight series is technically a chick flick in that the chick flick fantasy is laid out there, and the Bechdel test. Oh yeah, that could be its own fun thing to talk about down the road. But the movies like Twilight pass the Bechdel test, where it's this idea of like, you know, the worship of a particular sex. And of course, when people talk about the Bechdel test, usually it's the other way around, which is a problem with a lot of like, dude bro movies, right? It's the worship of the masculine. Well, the Bechdel test is basically that, right? But of course, it happens a lot the other way too. And so Twilight is a good example of a movie that passes the Bechdel test of basically like Isabel is like just some town girl and what a vampire and a werewolf. Their whole families go to war over this girl. Like it's ridiculous if you think about it, right? When you say it out loud like that, for sure. And so um, that is kind of like the chick flick element, right? It's kind of this the men sacrifice everything. Even though, well, and of course, the Bechdel test would kind of like point to the absurdities of it, right? Using Twilight as our prime example of easy passing the Bechdel test is like powerful vampire family and like savage werewolves go to war over one human girl. Like that's ridiculous when you say it, when you think of it out loud, right? Like people have fought stupid wars for a lot of stupid reasons, right? But think about like vampires and werewolves going to war over like one girl is really idiot. Like that's absurd, right? And so backtracking to like chick flicks and rom coms, right? Now I have to clarify that because I do like a good rom com, and there are some good ones around, mostly in Japanese animation. Japanese anime maintains a lot of traditional rom coms. You don't see that as much nowadays in Western media, but there were like some back in the day. They're all older movies, so like rom coms in the West kind of died around in the early '90s. But Japanese animation has kept a lot of it, and the only real reason why Japanese animation has been able to maintain it is because I guess Japanese audiences are real suckers for like the same thing over and over. Like Japanese audiences. Now I know it sounds like mega condescending because it makes it sound like I'm saying you're simpletons who just like the same thing and you will eat the same thing over and over. I mean, yeah, that's a lot of Japanese consumers in a nutshell. That's why anime is the way it is, right? But at the same time, one, it makes money. Two, you know, lots of Japanese people still keep doing it. It's an industry that's not going to die, so don't fix what's broke. You don't fix what isn't broken, right? But in a lot of Japanese rom-coms, they use a lot of the same formulas, right? And they use like a lot of like cliches. They just kind of twist the cliche, but it's really the same cliche, right? Opposites attract. Because they're opposites, there's natural tensions and conflict naturally arises from that. And then, you know, working through the conflicts and watching their headbutting kind of flowers their relationship, right? And that's the typical um, Japanese rom com, right? And then you can have fun with that by doing the harem element, where you have multiple girls or multiple guys with one girl or multiple girls with one guy. Usually it's the latter, but they tend to have something very contrasting to the selector, if you will, the main character, the selector, and then the headbutting of different personalities naturally creates tension. But then in those tensions, the relationship flourishes out of that, right? And to an extent, that is how a lot of relationships tend to be anyway, right? Is that your differences, you hash out your differences with your partner, right? In real life, that's true, right? In with your partners, you know, you tend to hash out your differences a lot more than you get along for what makes you the same. Which is one of the biggest problems of modern dating, right? Is that people just try to find someone who's just like them, but it's like then you'll run into real problems when um, you don't know how to handle, especially if like let's say you date someone for a while, and then everything is too perfect too early. You're in trouble because if you get too comfortable before you start hashing stuff out, then when that hashing out process begins, people just drop the ball and say like, "Oh, we shouldn't date then," right? Because I didn't know we were different, right? As opposed to saying like, "All right, we're two people with our own interests. We have to put priorities on what's more important within within our differences, and then you hash that out, and that's how any natural good relationship tends to, build itself, right? That's how we build relationships, right? That's how that works. But anyway, I know I'm on the crazy tangent of talking about rom-coms because I actually do like rom-coms, um, to an extent. But those Christmas rom-coms, right, and Christmas chick flicks, and one on, yup, me 10 years ago would have hated those movies. As an adult, and especially like one in our political climate, and two, like how crazy the world is in general, and of course, the oversaturation of like you know drama in like the media and whatever. Sometimes all you want to see is just like people having normal life, doing normal life things, right? And it's surprising that like those like Christmas romance movies that they pump out like crazy on like the Women's Network or whatever your equivalent is wherever you are. Those kind of movies, those Christmas rom-coms and chick flicks, they just like the reason why those movies are kind of boring is because like a lot of it is just people doing ordinary stuff, right? But when as you get older, at least I noticed this as I've gotten older, you look at those movies and you're like, man, I actually kind of wish life were like that, right? That life was just simpler in that way, right? I just do normal people stuff and have a little bit of silly rom-com wampe bullshit here and there. But at the end of the day, you kind of wish your life was more like straightforward, right? It wasn't as complicated as the loopholes we have to deal with now, right? You just kind of wish for like things to be simpler, and I think that's something that like ironically those Christmas movies actually show very well, right? Is that people have the simpler life, and that's why all the side characters in those shows are really really boring, which adds to why those movies are boring, right? Because the supporting cast are all like, well, they don't really contribute anything because they're just people, right? They're just there and they just exist and they just do normal people things, right? And there's nothing really interesting about that, but at the same time, sometimes you just want to have that regular, no drama, kind of life. And it is nice on the outlook. Of course, human beings by nature want adventure. And you have to balance out both, right? You can't always be on an adventure. But you can't always be like, you know, comfortable. You have to do both. But, I think with how the world is right now, I think we've had enough adventure, right? Sometimes you just want to have that simple, no drama, life. And I think that's one of those things about like those Christmas films. And I do have like I'll like come upstairs and watch with my mom sometimes, just watch like some boring Christmas film because it's like, oh, it would be nice to just like have that simpler life, you know, and just to be able to kind of live that drama free. Because that is what everybody kind of wishes, right? And I think like another thing about Christmas is just like I think that's why Christmas traditions are important, right? Because we kind of want that like, oh, that stability and that like that thing in life that's untainted, you know. And that's one reason why traditions exist. And the good of tradition is that you have something that's untainted, right? No matter how ridiculous life does get, no matter how ridiculous your life gets, you have something to fall back to as like, the place for you to give you that peace of mind. And I think that's why like, you know, once again, those Christmas traditions that you have with like family and whatnot, at least in an ideal, healthy family setting. Ideally, in a healthy family setting, there's no such thing as an ideal, healthy family setting. No family is perfect, but ideally, we have those healthier family settings that like, you know, you can fall back on and enjoy, time together and being family and laughing over dumb shit with your family, right? And I told this story a while ago, but I'll tell it again. And unfortunately, today it snowed, but it didn't snow that much. Right now, it started raining, and hopefully the rain will get rid of the snow. And I hope that's all the snow we get until Christmas, like after Christmas, okay? Because I kind of wish. So a couple weeks ago, almost a month ago, actually. It's weird to think how like time moves fast because time is weird. But like, a few weeks ago we had like some family over for like my cousin, a baby shower kind of thing. Basically, is what it was. And just the family just all being together for once in a long time, and it was really nice to have like us just spend time together, and once again just like not much happens, at these family gatherings. It's just us sitting around eating and laughing about stupid things, right? But because we haven't had it in so long, man, it was like such a nostalgic feeling, and like you know we all have that wish deep down of like some some semblance of like that stable tradition that like brings us together and allows us to live like the good the quote unquote when times were simpler, even though in actuality they weren't. But when times were simpler kind of mindset, right? And once again, in the case of we were having this family gathering for essentially a baby shower, just to laugh about stupid things, right? And it's the that laughter we find, like so much joy in our lives, and we bring so much happiness and stuff like that. And that's what we all want out of Christmas, right? And so, I know for some people that's not always the case, and I'm willing to acknowledge that. Like, yeah, I'm really blessed to have a good family, and especially the extended family too, right? Like, it's great that we all get along as well as we do, and we can get together and laugh, right? Be a family, right? And enjoy life like that. I think it's something that I know a lot of people don't have that, right? But I wish for you to find something like that in your life and build that tradition, right? And I know it can be hard these days, and of course, there's also the problem of like our modern internet age, and stats show that like even though we can easily find people over the internet, right? Like for instance, like okay, well you guys can hang out with me here on YouTube, right? Discord and other like Zoom and all those other like group chat things, right? And as great as those things are, nothing really compares to like being in the presence of another human being, right? I remember um, this one. This was years ago, and there was this one preacher, and he was talking about like one of the implications of Genesis 1:27, um, chapter 1 verse 27, and I've talked about this in great lengths in my Genesis reading. Definitely check out the playlist. Shameless plug-in, but you know, being made in the image of God, right? And this preacher was about how like think about like sitting on top of a mountain summit, or you know, or stand. He says standing on top of a mountain summit, or sitting next to an absolutely still lake, and the beauty that comes in those things, right? The delicacies of a flower at full bloom, and all those things, right? And as beautiful as those things are, right? They pale in the comparison of being in the presence of another human being, and that was really powerful. And I really understand. I like to think I really understand that, and it's one of those things of like, you know, being in others' company, and it's one of those funny things. And going back to the first story I kind of told about the ice cream, it's one of those weird things. I go out of my way to buy ice cream for my coworkers, right? Of course, I'm maybe later down the road when I make a bit more money, get my next paycheck, might buy some for the family too. But buying the ice cream for my coworkers, because the funny thing is like, what outside of my family and like a few others, like I don't really see anyone, right? I don't go out often. part of it is because, I'm a introverted video gaming comic book reading nerd. So there's that, right? But, I generally, don't see a lot of people in general, right? And of course, COVID only makes that more difficult because, I'm an introverted. Contrary to popular belief, I know a lot of people think very differently because a lot of people do see when I try to be more social, but in actuality, I am kind of like I'm a lot more introverted than I am extroverted. But with that said, like the people I work with are the people I see basically the most, and that's true of any job, right? If you work full time, those are the people you see the most. And so, with that said, you know, being in their presence is a wonderful thing, right? Being in the presence of other human beings, right? And so that's Christmas, giving Christmas gifts to like your coworkers and stuff like that. And in my case as well, you know, giving Christmas gifts to my coworkers is just a reminder of like, you know, I appreciate, I appreciate you, and that you're in my life, and that we have this connection, a very real like connection, as trivial as coworkers can be, right? And but like, in my workplace, we have a lot of good laughs and talk about a lot of fun, dumb shit, right? And having, enjoying each other's company. And so, Christmas time, use your Christmas times to show that appreciation of the people in your life that you have that connection with and you get to spend time with like that. And so that's something I encourage you to do, for the next few weeks as we do Christmas. I mean, in life in general, but start with Christmas and obviously work your way up. I know there's a lot of you guys are probably more like introverted and shy, and I'm not that different. I am quite shy and introverted, a lot more than you think a lot more than I appear to be, right? But of course, when I'm in front of a camera like this, like I prep for this. I know and I know the other thing too that's probably coming to mind is like, wait, you're a pastor, yet you're like shy and introverted, dude. A lot of pastors actually are, right? But I mean, once again, um, as far as being a pastor is concerned, being shy and introverted really has nothing to do with anything, right? Because of course, there's the other factor that pastors put into account, and that is, pastors do what they do because of how important preaching the gospel is to people, right? That like, yeah, I may normally be a more timid person, but you know, preaching the gospel is that important that I'm willing to overlook that and proclaim the word of God, right? And that's definitely true in my case, right? Like I'm a lot more shy normally. And of course that's another reason why, like, as much as like some of the guys they probably get like a little tired of it from time to time, but at the same time they get to see, you know, that passionate part of me, if you will, and the caring part of me. But, you know, I do bring up like talking about the Bible and stuff like that a lot. I talk about, my faith a lot because those things are so important that I'm willing to overlook my shyness and my more timid nature to do, because that's how much those things are important to me. And so, you know, to bring it back to how we, spend time in each other's presence during the Christmas season, you know, showing that appreciation for each other, allow that to overcome, your natural timid natures. I encourage you to do that, because I mean, on the other hand, I know it's not easy. It's not easy, right? I mean, I speak of years of experience, right? Years of experience makes me sound mega old, right? But like, yeah, it is something we must do, and so you'll work your way up there, you know, eventually, right? And you take as long as you need to, but at the same time, as we move forward, and I think once again, how appropriate that like we celebrate Christmas in December, even though technically Jesus was born in like September, but you know we celebrate it in December to remind us to be grateful and to take that initiative of spending quality time first with our families and then to broader communities and to society by extension of that. You know, you take it a step at a time, and Christmas allows you to build up to how you communicate with everyone around you and be that blessing in other people's lives, right? Be the Christmas joy in other people's lives. And then you can use that, what you learn from that, wherever you go any time of the year, right? So yeah, be that Christmas joy in someone else's life today. And every day as we move toward Christmas, right? Because, yeah, Christmas is coming quick. 20 days is not long. 20 days will come by fast. Speaking of things that are coming by fast, though, I mean, for this week, we got another week of, streaming Parson content, right? We got a video, we got a gaming stream to hang out on Wednesday, and that will be Wednesday, 3 o'clock Pacific time. So come hang out. I'm gonna play some games. We're just gonna fool around before, as we move into December. Just some December fun, just some Christmassy goodness. And then what else do we got? We got Heroes of Might and Magic 2, Price of Loyalty for Throwback Thursday. Definitely check out that. We're coming pretty quickly towards the end of the series, even, because I'm moving through the Price of Loyalty campaign, not to get confused with the Price of Loyalty expansion. I'm moving through that pretty quickly, so it won't take too long in the new year to be done Heroes by Magic 2. So don't forget to watch the playback of that too, because I have like 30 something videos. That'll be a fun Christmas binge, right? Just some Heroes of Might and Magic. Heroes of Might and Magic is just a great game, honestly. I really enjoy it. But anyway, enough of me blabbering about that. Then on Friday at 3 o'clock Pacific time. No, sorry. Fridays for the next couple weeks, for the rest of the year, really. We're just going to do Advent Bible reading. So it won't actually be like a Bible study like I've been doing. It'll just be like Christmas related Bible reading. Normally I start at 3 o'clock, but I'll actually start later for the rest of the year. Because once again, it's not a Bible study, so I'm not like going hard into the content. We're just doing Christmas reading, right? So those streams will actually be a lot shorter, and they'll only go for about an hour from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock on Fridays. That's the next 3 Fridays for our Bible reading streams. They'll all be shorter from 4 to 5. So that's what we're going to do this Friday as well. It'll be our first Advent one, even though technically it'll be like the end of the first week by the time we get to Friday and starting week 2. But that's besides the point. The point is we'll do our first Advent Bible reading stream this Friday at 4 o'clock. So that's the only major change. Well, minus the fact that I'm back to gaming on the channel. Friday's stream will be at 4 o'clock, not 3 o'clock. So, write that down. Keep a note of that. Our Bible reading stream on Friday will be later, and it will be shorter. We'll only go from 4 to 5 just for Christmas Bible reading. So that is how the week is going to look. So just a quick recap of that. Wednesday, game stream, 3 o'clock. 3 to 6-ish, right? Those gaming streams will be longer. So 3 to 6 on Wednesday. Thursday, upload. Heroes of Might and Magic 2, The Price of Loyalty. Throwback Thursday, business as usual. Friday, though, starting later for our Advent Bible reads. 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock as opposed to our 3 o'clock starting time on Fridays. So, that's it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed me talking about some Christmas stories and having a good time hanging out, as we move closer to Christmas. So, if you learned anything from me today, just remember to be that Christmas blessing for someone else. You know, be the Christmas joy. If in a world that people appear so bleak, you know, show that Christmas joy and be the Christmas joy you want to see, right? But anyway, with that said, this is going to be the end of the stream. I hope you guys enjoyed hanging out with me, and I will see you guys on Wednesday for our game stream at 3 o'clock. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and God bless you.